the church when she was 20 years old, and she joins us now. Melissa, great to have your company this morning. So you were born into a Scientologist family, so both your parents were part of the organization. So could we ask you what your childhood was like?
The first 4 years of my life were just a normal childhood. I was born in Switzerland, and we were just a normal Scientology family. When I was 4, my parents got divorced, and my dad went to St. Hill in England to join the Sea Org. So when I was 4 is when I was put into the Sea Organization, the Cadet Org, which is the Sea Org for the kids. So
what was that?
But the first 4 years of my life were just a normal childhood.
So you, along with other children, were part of what's called Cadet Org, and that forced you to live under the watch of the church. What was that experience like, Melissa?
It's hard. It was really, really hard. I am the kind of person that I think when I was born, I just was born questioning everything. So I went from having, a dad and a mom, and an older sister and a younger brother in a normal family life, to being in the Cadet Org where they treat you like you are an adult in a little kid's body. So, 7 o'clock in the morning, we would be lined up in lines. You had a post that you had to do. Your parents were not around. We stayed in a room that was for the girls, and then the boys had their own room. My dad was taken away essentially and joined the EPF, and we didn't see him. So, the way that they treat you is that you're not a child, you're a Thetan, and they just don't treat you like children. There was so much physical, mental, emotional, and even sexual abuse in the Cadet Org, and your parents aren't around. So that's just something that we dealt with as kids.
And you talk about that with your parents. But you talk about your parents not being around, because that is part of what they do there, really, isn't it? It's that separation of families to keep people isolated. And that can be quite damaging. They also punish communication. It's quite forbidden in that. I mean, growing up then, you're going through your teens, is that? How does that impact you?
There's something that I've always said about the kids that were in the Cadet Org with me. When you're a child, you kind of have this unconditional love from your parents. And growing up in the Cadet Org, we didn't know what it meant to have that kind of unconditional love. When I was, I think 9 or 10, I had told my governess to make me shut up, and she threw me, actually 2 of them threw me down a flight of stairs head first. I dislocated my shoulder, and I messed up my ear and my knee, and they threw me outside of the house, and it was winter. And I told my dad about it, and everything is handled internally. So even when you have a child that is being physically abused like that, the parents still have to follow LRH policy, and LRH policy is that when you're in the Cadet Org, your parents really don't have any rights to you. You have to go through the cadet coordinator, and if you don't go through the cadet coordinator, your parent gets in trouble. So, they made it where essentially, because the kids are kind of, they don't want the kids around, it's a distraction for the parents. Yeah. So we were just very isolated, and it was, the Cadet Org that I grew up in is known as being one of the worst Cadet Orgs in the world. Right. But, that kind of stuff happened all the time.
Melissa, you were 20 years old when you finally left the church. It's known to be a difficult process. How did you do it?
I took a bus from Edinburgh, Scotland, and my dad had actually called me and disconnected from me when I was in Scotland. And when you get disconnected from in Scientology, it's essentially like telling somebody that they're dead to you. I hadn't done anything that warranted that. I wasn't declared. But for me, it was like everything that I'd known growing up, because I always knew something wasn't right. That was kind of like a light bulb went off in my head. So I took a bus from Edinburgh, Scotland to Geneva, Switzerland. My mom had left when I was 14, 15. So I hadn't had any kind of communication with her. But I went and I wanted to find my grandma on my mom's side, and I got off the bus and I just happened to be walking up the street and I saw her.
Wow.
Wow.
And that was kind of, you know, yeah.
Your
Yeah.
pathway out. Well, Melissa, it's a harrowing story. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Still ahead on Today Extra, how